welcome back, folks, to the Off the Cuff with Steve Roberts series. It's my pleasure today to be in Taupo to talk to Russell Burling. Russell is one of, I think it's true to say, one of New Zealand's leading entrepreneurs and business persons in the motor vehicle industry, and has had a huge interest in the area. So Russell, welcome, and thank you for talking to us today. And in particular, I'm going to ask you to explain what we've got here.
Okay.
And particularly Steve Roberts's contribution to this masterpiece. So okay. What is it? What is it?
It's a Cooper 500 Donland Special, but it was the history of it. It was Jacks Brabham's first single-seater racing car. So about 30% of it was the original Jacks Brabham car. So the suspension, steering, rear enders. So like all of these cars that have been restored, they've been modified, changed, and in the time that Jack had it, in the 50s, early 50s, every week they had a different motor. I think he actually had 4 different motors in this chassis, even though it's not the original chassis. Steve modified it, someone else made it, Steve modified it, but because it was off cliffs, off trailers, it's been crashed, bashed for 60 or 70 odd years. So. Fortunately for me, I was able to purchase this car from Shannon's Auctions after the Melbourne Motor Show in around 2004, 2005. And it came up for sale. They thought there'd be huge interest in the car, bit of a story to it. Went to auctions. Shannon thought they were going to get a lot of international interest, but it only had a Triumph motor in it, and it looked a little bit scruffy. And at that time, there wasn't a big interest in these kind of cars. So,
so when we saw the images of what this was like when you bought it, and what it's like now, that's
completely changed.
That must have been a pretty big job for Steve. Steve. So what was his brief, just to get it back to a picture?
Yeah, Steve has a great interest in these cars from being a young guy and being English, and you know, he was thrilled when I told him I had the car. He said, "Send it down to me." So I went to Wanganui, and it stayed in Steve's shed for some years, maybe 10 or 12, and I used to ring up and he'd say, "Get that motor made." So
joint long-term project.
Joint long-term project. Steve loved having it in a shed. But I chose to turn it back to how Jack had it when it did the best, and that was to get a Vincent 1100 engine for it. And the only way to get one of those in an economical way and get one that run was to have one rebuilt in England.
Right. Essentially, what we saw as the original that you supplied to him, engine coming from the UK, put it together. Yeah,
he took it apart and he redid all the body. And the bottom part is aluminium. All these parts are all aluminium that Steve handcrafted. And then he redid the fiberglass to fit. So Steve did everything on the body, re-strengthened it everywhere. Obviously had to modify it a lot to put the Vincent engine in it. So Steve carried out all that work, and it made the exhaust system. I mean, it's a beautiful piece of art, the exhaust system. And then he sent it back to me. And some of its old colour and all, and then I stripped it right back, and we went right through, repainted it, redid the car, and got it back to the spirit of what Jack had it in.
Wow, so this is where it all began, because for my generation growing up in this country, Jacks Brabham and Cooper's was sensational worldwide stuff. Wasn't it? I mean, this is where it started.
Yeah, and it's on the list there, the auction documents there, that he drove it at Bathurst, so in the time back then, so and some street circuits and things. So it's had a very interesting and colourful career. And you know, it's exciting to own it, and it was very exciting to have Steve do this car for me, because he's one of the best people in the world to do this kind of thing. And understood it. I think you might get someone to do it, but it's getting harder and harder to find someone to understand the spirit of how the cars were.
Fascinating.
And he definitely does that.
Yeah, fascinating. So we're seeing the artistic work of Steve Roberts here. Could we see perhaps underneath?
We're going to take it off and fire it up.
Why don't we do that?
As long as we can get it started,
why don't we try that now, and we can come back.
It'll take us a few minutes, but I'll get it done.
That'd be great.
We'll fire it up.
That'd be great. Excellent.
All right.
Excellent.
it.
Wow.
All right, that should be. Yeah. That should get them going a bit.
Moving that thought on to post-World War II and the Cooper Vincent.
Yes.
The Cooper
Now, there's
Vincent.
that was another interesting job. Gee, that was a good one. Young Russell Burling, he was a good keen man. It was up for auction in Australia, and it said Jacks Brabham owned this car in the 1950s. It was his first championship car. Right. And Russell, obviously, wow, I have that one. And he got it.
Yeah.
The Donland Special, they called it.
Ah, yes.
And
yeah.
when Jack had it, he had a Vincent engine in it.
Right. Yeah.
And so Russell said, we've got to get it back with a Vincent engine. And he placed an order to a chap in Britain who's making brand spanking new Vincent V-twin 1000cc motors.
Yes. Yeah.
And a couple of years later, it arrived.
Right.
My job was to make the body back to how it should look, and B, fit the engine into the car, which involved quite a lot of tube removing and tube replacing. And the other thing was, it was very high. When Russell sat in the car, he was sitting right up in the air. So I made it so that the chassis he could sit lower in the car. And generally speaking, it all went together quite well, really. It was a very interesting little job.
Yeah. We went and took a look.
Yeah.
And in fact, there's some footage of it being started up somewhere.
Oh, good.
And,
the noisy motors.
But the thing that stood out for me was just how clean and magnificently you'd done the lines on it.
Yes.
And fiberglass as well. The rear was in fiberglass.
All the fiberglass was damaged. We had to we didn't make new fiberglass, but we did repair the fiberglass top and engine cover.
Yes.
But all the other aluminium was all brand new. All the side panels, seats, tanks, all that was all new, which we had to do really. But it's a piece of kit. I'd love to drive it up. I'd love to have a drive.
Yeah, well, we put the thought out that, not yet to the organisers, but it'd be great to see that demonstrated at the cemetery circuit.
Wouldn't it be just?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be something? Because that's more a cycle car.
Yeah, absolutely. So
the JAPEC and that together.
Yeah. So we'll talk to the powers that be and see how they react. So the other thing about that car that interested us, Steve, was that car essentially represents the beginning of the modern era, doesn't it?
Oh, it
with
does,
rear
yes.
engine
Well,
cars, Cooper was
Cooper
that.
was the man.
Yes.
Putting rear engine jobs and
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
so well with his cars.
Yes.